What do agriculture and business have to do with each other? Stick around. We're going to talk with Abigail to find out exactly what the connection is. But before we get going, I am Traci Poe, host of the Oh Yes I Can Women in Business podcast. Welcome. If you have not hit subscribe, like all the things, go ahead and do that now. And Abigail, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. So this is Abigail Jackson Daniels, and she is a member of the Oh Yes I Can Women in Business group. And I'm just going to turn it over to you. Let our audience know who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Abigail, and my day job is an accountant. And then my passion project is Avocado Entrepreneur, which is talking about how the principles of agriculture can be applied to business.
Okay, so let's talk more about that. So, how did you come to this love of agriculture and wanting to marry the two?
Well, coming to a love of agriculture is probably a long story, which I will try to sum up. But my dad actually was an ag teacher. He taught in a rural high school, and he taught agriculture, and so it's kind of in my blood, I guess you could say. um, and I actually worked for a global nonprofit that taught or teaches, they still exist, but they teach small scale farmers how to grow enough food to feed their families. So think people in
Wow.
Africa who literally are starving, and they're relying on growing enough mustard greens in their yard to not starve. Um, and so I was obsessed with the agriculture side and permaculture and self-sustainability and homesteading and stuff of that nature, but I'd also always been an entrepreneur and done a lot of research on online business, and there's just so much information out there about business in general, and everything seems to contradict itself, and there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. And I had studied for 7 years and still felt like I didn't really understand how it all fit together, like the bigger picture puzzle pieces. And so
Mm.
there's this verse in Leviticus, and I can never remember exactly which chapter and verse. I think it's like 27, chapter 27, verse 9. I'll fact check myself in a
Okay.
second. But anyway, the verse is, when you first come into the promised land and you plant trees, you're supposed to leave the tree alone for 3 years. The fourth year, all the fruit of the tree is the Lord's. And then the fifth year, you can start to eat from it. And that verse just stuck in my brain. And it doesn't
Mm.
stand out in the actual Bible passage. So this was something that I think personally I was supposed to pay attention to, because it's just stuck in my brain for years. And I was like, what if a business is like a tree? And what if we use the principles of agriculture to understand how business works? What if we take the idea of growing something and we put
Mhm.
it into the context of entrepreneurship and business? Because at least for me, I want to grow a business that supports me long term. I'm not trying to make a bunch
Right.
of money super fast, like that be my goal. Making money quickly is also fun, and I'm not going to say no to it if it happens, but having that as a goal just muddies the waters, and it makes it so hard and so complicated. And there's so many things you could do, and people say, oh, this works and that works. And how do you decide?
Right.
And then how do you come up with some kind of moral or ethical guardrails for yourself of, these are the things that I am comfortable doing to make money that
Right.
fast? And so it became this whole philosophy for me of building something that can sustain itself, but that also takes care of me as much as I'm going to take care of it. It's something that, if I set it up correctly, can run itself. So when I start having kids, I can take the time to take care of my kids, but I don't have to quit working. The business will be there sustaining me and my family. And then also just to say, to myself out loud, I don't want to build $1 billion business. I don't want to have a Fortune 500 company. I don't want to have 50,000 employees. I don't want to be the CEO who has to work 12 hours a day. I want the time
Right.
freedom to be with my family and to go on adventures and to work from Universal and like to spend a whole day knitting so I can get my socks done for Christmas without worrying about the money part. So I also want the money freedom of a
Right.
business that is big enough to sustain me to have the time freedom.
Okay, so I'm really glad that you talk about this because so many times people will start a business and they'll
Mhm.
have this idea of, I'm going to get rich fast. And
Mhm.
how often does that happen? Not very often. But then let's talk about the principle of slow and steady wins the race. And when you talk
Yes.
about that
Yes.
sustainability, that is huge. I watched a local company really take off. I would say they did so much growing in the first couple of years. And what's happened now
Mm.
is now they've got a ton of problems because they
Mhm.
grew way too fast.
Too
So you
fast.
have to ask
Yes.
yourself, what capacity do I have if this thing
Mhm.
really takes off and grows super, super fast? So
Yes.
I do. I mean, again, I'm with you. Like if a ton of money comes my way, I'll figure it out. But in the
Right.
meantime, I agree with you. Let's set it up right.
Mhm.
And that is not an excuse to not take action. That is
Right.
not a
Anybody
everybody let's
who's
just be in our heads for
yeah.
3 years and then we'll make a move, right? That's not
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what were you going to say?
Anybody who's actually planted a garden knows it is a lot of work, but you can't make things grow faster. They grow at the
Right.
rate they're gonna grow. You have to do the work
Right.
to keep them weed free and water them and stuff, but yeah, it's not an easy row to hoe, as they say.
And you know what? I like that you talk about weeding because if you think about it, at least our experience in my backyard, in my flower
Mhm.
bed, if you weed and weed and weed the first several years, it's a lot,
Mhm.
right? It's a lot of weeding, but you keep
Yeah.
putting mulch down and then you weed the next year. You put more mulch down and so
Mhm.
on. And pretty soon those weeds are fewer and far between.
Yes.
And so then it is so much easier to maintain that flower bed, that
Exactly.
garden bed, that whatever,
Mhm.
because you put so much work in up front
Yes.
and now it's easier, and it doesn't mean you don't go weed. You go weed because if
Mhm.
you don't stay on top of it, then you got a mess pretty soon.
Yes.
But I like that you really talked about that weeding.
Mhm.
So I just I've never had anybody, and I'm sure they're out there, but I've never had anybody who weaves in the principles of nature of agriculture with the business unless they are in the business of
Of agriculture. Yes.
agriculture or, so I really like that you say, let me look at this. Let me
Mhm.
look at the way things develop naturally
Mhm.
and let's figure out how to apply that toward business principles. So that's unique
Hmm.
and it's also huge.
Hmm.
So I like that. Okay. So let our audience know you have this philosophy with agriculture. What do you do? What is your business? Let us know.
Well, my business is multi-pronged, I guess I should say. My core services are accounting services. So I
Mm,
do bookkeeping and accounting and reporting and consulting for creative entrepreneurs. So that's people who have online businesses like you do, where you do coaching and consulting, have an info product, a course, mastermind, that kind of stuff.
mhm,
But the principles, the larger principles that I like to talk about is more of a mindset shift. And so I'm building a school community around understanding the principles of money management through this agricultural lens. So that's some of the same stuff like co-working sessions and workshops and different challenges and things that we do in the group with the goal of helping people go from the very first level of business where you're figuring it out, you're deciding what to do, all the way up to the top level. And again, I'm talking specifically to people who don't want a humongous business. We're talking
right,
something that's small enough to sustain by yourself, solopreneur, very small
mhm,
team. It's called a cottage industry business, which I have to go through this whole thing to explain what cottage industry means usually, but it's a work from home business where you're the one doing most of the work.
mhm,
So my my goal is to help people get to whatever level of that kind of business that they want to get to and then sustain it. Because a tree, if we're thinking about it as agriculture, a tree does not grow indefinitely. It doesn't scale indefinitely. The tree grows to the size of its species and then it more or less maintains the same size. It's still living, it's still growing, but it might be growing bigger around. It might start new shoots, new branches, it might produce fruit, but you're not gonna see an apple tree that's 6,000 feet tall. So the idea of scaling indefinitely, I think, puts too much pressure on people because then you have this outside expectation that you have to hire a bunch of employees. You have to have a team that does everything for you, or else it's not a real business and you're only making yourself a job. And I say, what's wrong with making yourself a job? If it's making you enough money and you can maintain it and it's sustaining you, all for it. Like, you don't have to
Right.
be able to pass it down to shareholders when you die.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
No.
Like, we
Yeah.
have the option to do that.
And I like that you say, what's wrong with building a business to have a business, to work in a business, right?
Mhm.
Because so many times as entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, we see the big names, right?
Mhm.
The big names that,
Yes.
I'm a $1 billion this or that, and come
Mhm.
follow my program, and you can be $1 billion this or that with me. And sometimes you just have to think, but what if I don't want to be
Yes.
that?
Yes.
What if I don't want to be that $1 billion this or that?
Mhm.
So
And it's
I
okay
like that you're
not to be
yeah,
that.
exactly. Exactly, and I like that you're bringing up, you know what? There are some options here. You start a business to what end? It's your business. You get to decide. Do you wanna
Mhm.
try to be the $1 billion this or that? Or do you just want enough to be able to work when you wanna work, have things kinda rolling along, be
Mhm.
sustainable, help pay some bills, have
Yes.
that flexibility and that freedom to go to Universal and work from Universal, right?
Mhm.
So, I think it all just depends on your goals, so I like that you're bringing this up. I like it.
Hmm.
Okay. Alright,
Thank you.
so what tips do you have for our audience? Share.
Well, as far as tips go, that can be very unique based on what business they have. But in general, I think it's important to decide what you want out of your business so that you
Mm,
can temper your expectations. Like we were just talking about, the external expectations can put so much pressure on us to feel like we have to worry about all these things when really either we're not at the level that we need to worry about them yet or we will never need to worry about them. And so it's just taking up extra time and energy and resources that would be better spent in other ways. So knowing what you want out of your business is important. And by that I mean knowing what kind of a lifestyle you want it to support and then
right,
figuring out if you already have an established business, you're already providing services, you're already selling products, is that moving you towards what you want in your life, in your lifestyle, in
right.
your business? Or do you need to make some changes? Because the foundations really are where everything else is based out of. So, not only I talk about agriculture, which is a humongous, broad subject. So, for people who are familiar with agriculture at all, I'm not talking about like when we think of agriculture, we might think of like big agriculture. So
Right.
wheat fields in Kansas that are like monocultures that are humongous fields. I'm
Mhm,
talking about permaculture, which is a
mhm,
subset of agriculture that is more in line with food forests and uh, multicultural gardens, where not like multi country, but cultures as
right.
in the different kinds of plants that you're growing. And so the plants support each other and they provide a closed
Uh-huh.
ecosystem where the water, the fertilizer, all of that comes into the system is then recycled through the different plants that live in cahoots with each other, so to speak. So we want our business to be a closed loop system. So the money that comes in gets used in the most efficient way possible. We want the customers and the leads that come in to be used in the most efficient way possible. And then we want our business to be part of the larger ecosystem of our niche, of our market. You keep going out and out where it supports other people's permaculture systems as well. And ideally, we would all be, have our own little garden, but it would all be like right next to everybody else's little gardens. And so it would just be like one humongous, beautiful garden. And I would love to see that like in real life, but I don't know if we have room for all those many gardens. But one thing I was thinking of that we were talking about growing too fast earlier, and actually that happens in the plant world too. It's called bolting. When a plant grows too quickly, it bolts, which means it gets very tall very fast. This happens a lot
Mm,
in herbs, especially, but other kinds of plants can do it too. If it gets too tall too fast, it can't support its own weight, and so it falls over and it dies quickly. So for the people that we hear about that are like, I'm going to make $1 million in a month with this funnel, if you pay attention and you're like, they said they were going to make this much money, they pushed and pushed and pushed to make it happen, but are they still around? Do they still have a business? Are they still running their funnel? Because more than likely, what I have observed happening is they grow very quickly, they can't support their own weight, they have too many problems because they didn't set the foundations first. And so either that business collapses entirely and they're now doing something completely different, or they have to prune very heavily and chop a bunch of stuff off and go back to basics. But unfortunately, when you have a tree that grows super tall, super quick, and you chop it so that way it has smaller branches, it's never the same. It's never as strong or as healthy as it could have been if it had grown more slowly from the very beginning. So I guess my biggest mindset shift, paradigm shift, whatever you want to call it, is don't be afraid for it to take time, because
mm,
good things take time. And the
mhm,
faster you try to push things to happen, the more unhealthy it becomes.
mm. Okay, that's fascinating. Just I'm a plant person, but the idea that when you chop it off, it's never as strong or as healthy as it would have been before.
Mhm.
So, okay, so I really like that, and let me give you an example, and I'm kind of sad about it, but so my mom passed in 2022.
Oh.
And one of her friends came and said, "Hey, can I take a rose from her casket spray? And I'm going to go
Mm.
home and try to root it and get it growing."
Aw.
And I thought, "Wait, you can do that?" And so I had a couple and I came home and I did research, kept them in the refrigerator for like a
Mm.
month, did some research, did some things, and one out of, I think, 3 or 4 of the roses actually rooted.
Mhm.
And so now I have what is sort of a rose bush, but it's interesting because one was growing really tall, one stalk,
Mhm.
and starting to branch out, which was putting weight on it. And so I thought, "Okay, I need to keep this alive," and so I cut it off,
Mm.
and now it's doing a couple of other things, but I'm just wondering, did I what would have happened? I don't know. Maybe I saved it.
Mm.
Maybe I made it not so healthy or strong. I don't know. Time will tell, but that
Mhm.
is fascinating in thinking if you have to start going in and doing all of this emergent type care,
Mhm.
what does that really do in the long run? I
Yeah.
I don't know, but again, I find this so fascinating. Okay, because your background is in accounting or that's what your business is,
Mhm.
here's one of the things I say to people all the time.
Mhm.
My background, not in business.
Mhm.
I, I don't know. Like, I know communication.
Mhm.
I know how to help people give talks on stage. I know how to work on interpersonal communication skills. That's what I do. I
Mhm.
help people with that. I don't know how to set up spreadsheets and run books and all of that.
Yes.
And so, I've had people say things like, "What are your books?" And I kind of like, That's funny." So I love that people like you are here to help people like me who it's like, I have a passion for a thing. I
Mhm.
don't know business. I don't know about accounting and all of
Mhm.
that, which I did take accounting in college, but so I really like that you are here for people like me that you can help. So here are my couple of questions for you just from that accounting
Mhm.
lens. What advice would you give people who maybe are starting out with their business? Maybe they've started it or they're about to, and they're catching this podcast. What types of things might you say to them that's going to help them within that area of bookkeeping or accounting?
Mhm.
Aside from
So
hiring.
yeah. So, if they are just starting out and let's say they're testing different offers, they're making a little bit of money, but they haven't like gotten a pipeline or anything like that. Um, if you're just starting out, you don't need a business bank account. You do need to keep your business money separate from your personal money, but the
Okay.
business money doesn't have to be in a business bank account. The business money can be in a personal checking account that's just different from the one that you pay your groceries out of.
Oh,
Because
okay.
most business bank accounts are set up for people running $25,000 through there a day. And so whatever benefits they say they have are calculated based on a large amount of revenue. So
Okay.
either they're like you have to keep a minimum of $10,000 in there or they charge you a monthly fee that gets waived if you have a minimum. Like there's some benefits if you have that much money, but if you're just getting
Mm,
started and you don't have that much money, it's usually not worth it. And it's especially if the monthly fee for having a business account is as much money as you're making right now, you do not need a
mm,
business bank account.
right.
If you're
Yeah.
wondering, do I need one now? Probably not. You will know when you need one. Because
Okay.
things will start to happen where you're like, "Actually, I need to be able to transfer more at a time," or, "I need to let my accountant have view only access," and you usually can't do
Mm,
that with a personal checking account. So,
mm,
if you're first getting started, you're gonna be doing it yourself, so make it as easy as possible. All you have to do is have personal money in a separate account and business money in a separate account. And I actually just went over this in a workshop that I did earlier this morning. So I'll give a very, very brief little recap right here. But you want three accounts that you use for business money, and
okay.
then your personal, however you have your personal account set up, can be separate from that. But I'm assuming you at least
Okay.
have like a checking account to pay the bills out of. But you
Mhm,
want a checking account where all of your business money comes into, and I call that my
mhm,
pool can because money
mhm,
follows the principles of water. So you want all of that water that's coming in, the money that's coming in to be collected into a pool can, which is your
mhm,
gross revenue, and then you distribute out of that pool can into the other areas of your business. So you're going to save, you're
okay,
going to take the taxes and the profit, and you're going to put that into a savings account that's just for business. And then
okay,
you're going to take the operating expenses and put that into a separate checking account that's for business expenses. And then you're going to take the money that you're paying
okay,
yourself and you're going to transfer that to your own personal accounts. These can be at the
okay,
same bank. I find that it's better if they're not at the same bank because it reduces
okay.
the temptation of borrowing out of the business account just real quick and you promise
Mm,
yourself you'll pay it back and you never do. So if it's at two separate
mm,
banks, then you have to wait a couple of days for the transfers to happen. And so then that helps you keep it separate and like enforce the separation. The reason why it's important
mm,
to have it separate is because of something called the corporate veil, which is a made up term because the business people and the government people got together and said, we will pretend that as long as it's in separate accounts, it's a separate thing. And if it's not, if it's all in one account and your business gets sued, then the judge will say, oh, but you didn't keep your corporate veil. And therefore, all of your personal things are now at risk to pay back this suit. But if you have the
mm,
corporate veil intact and you have your business and your personal things separated, then if the business gets sued, Only the business's assets are at risk and your personal stuff is protected. Now, this is through if you have an LLC
Mhm.
or anything higher than that. If you're a sole
Mhm.
proprietor, having the separate is important for tracking and for data, but
Mhm.
it's a little different on the legal side.
Mm.
So, having a separate is very important no matter what, but it's especially important if you have an LLC because the
Mhm.
point of having an LLC is to separate yourself legally from the business entity. And if you have
Mhm.
all of your stuff in one account, that just undoes it and you might as well not have an LLC.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I have an LLC, so good to know.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I will say this would have been helpful for me to know when I started Communicate Great because I did go and start the business account and I am now getting to I'm not, 25,000 every day running through there, but I am now getting to the point where I can definitely pay that monthly fee because I'm not keeping that minimum balance, but
Mhm.
that would have been very helpful to know for sure. So that's a great,
Yes.
great piece of advice.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Some other pieces of advice are that when you're doing your bookkeeping yourself, so money management is separate from accounting. What we're just talking about is money management. It's knowing how it's coming in and where it's going out and how much is going to each thing. Accounting is looking at your expenses, your assets and liabilities, tracking all of that stuff so you know how much to pay in taxes. Most people only do accounting because of taxes.
Mm,
The next level up is to do accounting because you need the data to make good decisions. So
mm,
if you're only doing accounting for taxes, a lot of times what happens is people say, "Oh, well, I don't need it until April 15th, so I just won't do it until we're down to the wire and we need this information for April 15th." And so they'll they'll do their accounting in one fell swoop for the whole year and get all that stuff figured out, which is a headache to do all at once for a whole year. And so they get their taxes done, you know, phew, at the end of the wire, we finally made it. But they have no idea how much they made. They don't really know. It maybe on paper, the tax person says, "Oh, you made this much profit," but they don't actually have that in their actual bank account. So it's like, okay, that was nice, but like I don't actually have money to do anything with. Um,
right.
and so at the end of the year, you get to see what you did, but now it's way too late to do anything about it. And so
Mm,
you're like, I'm going to try to change things next year, but I don't really know how I'm going to make that happen because I don't know where it's all
mm,
going in the meantime. So, accounting on a regular basis, the more transactions you have, the more often you have to do your bookkeeping. Bookkeeping is categorizing transactions um, and like moving money if you need
mm,
to cover things. But usually it's just categorizing transactions. And categorizing transactions is in an accounting software. So I use QuickBooks. I'm a certified
mm,
QuickBooks Pro advisor. When you connect QuickBooks to your bank account, it pulls in from the bank feed what you spent the money on, and then you categorize it according to what kind of business expense it was.
mm,
So when the undeterred mastermind expense comes out, I say, okay, that was dues and memberships. And when my
mm.
ChatGPT subscription comes out, I say that's software and tools. And so I go through and
Okay.
I categorize what kind of business expense it is. Now, if you only have a couple, you can do it once a month. If you have 25 to 50 transactions a month, you probably should do it twice a week or no, every other week. And then if
Okay.
you have like over 100, you probably should do it once a week just to make sure that you don't forget what things were for. Because sometimes
Mm,
you have stuff that's the same every month. And then sometimes you have to pay one off to something that on the bank it says something weird and you're like, I have no idea what that is. And so
right.
if you're trying to remember a month later, a year later, you have no idea what that was for. But if you do
Right.
it that week, then you'll be able to remember, oh, hey, I spent this amount of
Okay.
money and this is probably what it's for. Plus, if you're keeping track of it regularly like that, you will catch fraud much faster. So if you put your card into something and they steal your information and you
Right.
don't do your receipts until the end of the year, there's no way of stopping that, of getting it back. But if you
Right.
are keeping track of it every other week, every week, however often, even once a month is better. You can be like,
Right.
I definitely did not pay $29 5 times to this one person.
Right.
Something's wrong
Yeah.
here. And that gives you a chance
Yeah.
to go back and get that money back.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because there's that finite amount of time that you can dispute something.
Yes, exactly.
So, perfect.
And then
Perfect.
the next level up past that in like accounting power ups is when you have that information of I'm spending this much in a month in tech and tools, and I'm spending this much a month in continuing education, and I'm spending this much a month in meals with clients. That gives you a chance to actually budget and say, I want to not spend that much on meals, or I want to cut
Mm,
back on unnecessary tools, or I
mm,
spent like way too much in processing fees and I need to figure out a different processor, whether I want to go through Stripe or through Square or through PayPal or through QuickBooks, like who's
right.
actually running the payments collection, because the processing
Mm,
fees, payroll and processing fees are like the biggest expenses that businesses have.
mm.
So if
Okay.
you're keeping an eye on those things, then you can say, okay, I this is generally what's acceptable, but I think I can do better. And so I'm going to try to finagle a better processing fee transaction percentage. Or I'm spending like way too much on coffee because I just go to Starbucks every day and I call it a work trip, but it's really not. And so I need to be better about that.
Right. Yeah.
And then when you have all of those things connected and you're tracking the transaction that came in and who bought it and what it was for, then you're tracking your money that you're making, and so you can say, oh, this workshop that I sold made 80% of the money, and I have all of these other things that I am selling, but they made 20% of my revenue. Let me focus on the workshop and
Right.
figure out why people want the workshop so
Nice.
much. And so then you can optimize based on what's actually working. They say that people put their money where their mouth is or whatever. Like, people will
Mm,
say, "Oh, I'm interested in all these other things," but if they're not paying for all those other things, don't put your energy into making them. Like,
right.
you can see in the data what's actually doing the best, what sorts of things people are actually acting on, paying for, putting time and energy into, and then you can start to optimize, and that's where you get into, like, about page conversion rates and lifetime gross value and
Right.
LTV to CAC and all of those big, scary sounding words that people use. My mom says she doesn't speak alphabet. I feel that way sometimes. But all those alphabet terms people use, this is what we're talking about, is the data,
Right.
the granular decisions, and knowing what is
Mhm.
affecting what. But you can't make those decisions if you don't have the data.
Right. Right. And I agree. I agree. Yeah, I agree. I'm just gonna stick with that. Ask me if I do it, but I agree. It's really good
Mm,
advice,
mm.
Abigail.
That is always the problem, doing it, yes.
Right, right, right. Okay, so here's another question that I was thinking about when you were talking about I've got this 80% thing that does most of it, and then I've got these 20%. So I always hear that you need to have at least X number of these income streams.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've heard that. I've heard seven. I've heard, I don't even know all the numbers. So, A, what is your thought on that? And then B, you're talking about, okay, well, if this is getting me 80%, but you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket,
Hmm.
right? You don't want to completely let some of these other ones go. At what point is your opinion? At what point do you think, okay, it's worth this because this is part of one of those streams of
Hmm.
income? So, one, what number would you say? And two, how do you determine if it's worth that being one of your streams?
Hmm. This is a very like broad topic. And I think the reason it's so broad is because people have very different definitions of what they mean by income streams and eggs in a basket. So I would say that the way I think about it for myself is that one business is an income stream. So I feel like a lot of people granularize it and they're like, this product is an
Mm,
income stream, this service is an income stream, like each individual thing is an income stream. But I would say that you have the income from this kind of business, you have the income from this kind of business, you have the income from this kind of
Mm,
business. Now, most people don't want to run multiple businesses, which is
mm,
fair and also probably smarter because it's a lot to keep track of if you have multiple businesses. So when
right.
I think of income streams, I'm thinking of my business. I'm thinking of like owning real estate. I'm thinking of having investments. I'm thinking of the fact that my husband supports me. So that's technically an income stream for me.
Right.
So different
Hmm,
ways of making money, to me, I would lump them together. If they're all in this under the same umbrella, I would say that was one income stream.
ah.
And then
Mm,
within that income stream, then you can decide if the majority of the income is coming from one offer, from one service, from one product. Then you can cut off some of the other ones without worrying about jeopardizing the other income streams because those are completely separate from your business.
interesting.
But
Right. Right.
within the
I know you're
business,
right. You're dead on. Sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
within the business, the idea is you don't want one customer to be the majority of your income. So that actually happened to me this year. So I had a couple of smaller clients. I had one CPA that I was subcontracting with, and he was paying me to do the bookkeeping for his clients.
Huh.
And then he got to the point where he was big enough where he wanted to hire an in-house bookkeeper, which is great.
Mm,
I wanted him to grow and get to the point where he was ready for that. But that meant that he didn't need me to do it anymore. And he that client was 51% of my revenue. So when he was like, "I loved working with you, but I'm ready to, move on now." I'm out 51% of my revenue, cut in half
right.
in 1 month. And the only reason why I didn't just fizzle out completely and just be like, "Okay, I'm gonna just figure out something else to do now," is because
Mm,
of the money system that I talked about earlier. Because when the money comes into the pool can, you leave it there, and I leave it there for a month. So I only spend the money that I make the month after I've made it, which puts me
mm,
30 days ahead or longer. So when he said in August, "It was great, bye," then I didn't start feeling it until October and this month.
right.
And that gives me time to make the money back again, to get a new client, to figure out a new offer. And so it
Mm,
smooths it over and it covers your butt when stuff like that happens.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's huge. No, that and often you hear about people that happens to them. They'll have a big person and then that big person goes away and
Mhm,
you're left, oh my goodness, how am I going to sustain now?
mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
in answer to
interesting.
your original question, I would not put all of my eggs in one basket on multiple levels. I wouldn't have all my eggs in one client. I need enough clients that any one client only makes up 10% of my revenue for that income
Mm,
stream. That's my goal.
yeah,
I don't have that currently, but that's my goal. um, and then I wouldn't put all of my eggs in one income stream. I would want multiple income streams in different ways. So that could be a main
mm,
business, that could be a side hustle, that could be investments. If you've put
right,
money into investments to the point where they are paying you back dividends, that's an income
right.
stream. If you own real
Yeah.
estate, you're making profits off of renting, that's an income
Mm,
stream. Yeah.
yeah. Interesting. What I was gonna say earlier is, but I always thought in terms of, okay, this product is bringing me now I need at least 7 product
Mhm.
streams. So, yeah, I like that you said a lot of people think in those terms, but that is not truly what this means.
That's what it
So,
means
and
to me. I don't know like what the real definition is if there is a
right.
definition, but to me.
Yours makes more sense because let's say within Communicate Great,
Mhm.
I'm putting all, oh, okay, I've got all these streams and then I have to close it down.
Mm.
Now I've got 7 streams to go find again,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas with Communicate Great is one stream and it goes away. Now I have to replace one stream
Yes.
instead of
Yes.
All of
All
them.
of them. Yes.
So that makes sense. Yeah, I like
Yes.
it. Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you want to share with our audience before we close out? Maybe how to find you, another tip? What you have?
As I think what I would want to the takeaway to be, if people only remember one thing, is that money is not as complicated as everyone tries to make it sound.
Mm,
Money is money. Business money and personal money should be managed about the same way. If you're good at managing your personal money, you can manage your business money. If you aren't very good at either one and you focus on managing your business money, you can take those principles and you can apply it to your personal money.
I like
We
it.
keep it separate for legal stuff and to make it easier to track, but money is money. And it's
Mm,
just like with your health. If you're like, only the doctor can tell me what's wrong with me, then you're reliant on the doctor and you're just waiting for him to tell you what's wrong with you. If you're like, only a finance person can tell me what to do, then you're reliant on the finance person. And
right.
if if you understand how it works and you can see the big picture of where everything is going, you don't have to depend on anyone else. Sure, you might hire someone to do it for you because you don't like doing it. That's fair. But you should still understand how it works because
Right.
otherwise you'll have no idea whether they're cheating you or not. If
Mm,
you understand it, you can trust someone to hand it off to them because you'll know what they're supposed to be doing or not.
mm, right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's huge. And just that whole we could do a whole other podcast on finding help that's not gonna cheat you and how do you
Yes.
know and all of that,
Yes.
but okay. All right, so my last question for you is what are you knitting? What are
I
you
am
knitting?
making a mitten because I made one when it got really cold and I have two hands. So I have to make another mitten.
That is great. I love it. I love it. So I was sharing with you earlier, my daughter-in-law crochets.
Mhm.
And so if they come over for dinner or whatever, she's always got her little stuff with her and she just sits and
Mhm.
she crochets. She does earrings, which are really very
Aw.
cute. But she does flowers and hearts and she's doing snowflakes right now
Wow.
because we're coming into the holiday season.
Yes.
So anyhow,
Yeah,
just curious, just
it
curious.
helps me think
Yeah.
to have my hands busy.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay. Abigail, thank you so much for coming on the Oh Yes I Can Women in Business podcast. And did we cover how people can find you?
I don't think so, but I
Okay.
am on School, Skool. I'm there. Probably the best way, if you're not already on School, the best way to find me is to go to my website, avocadoentrepreneur.com, and I link to the my group from there. So you can ask to join the group if you're not already on School. If you are already on School, then come and find me in whatever group we're both in, and you can click on my name, and then it goes to my profile, and my group is there under my profile as well.
Mhm. Right. Good deal. Are you on any social media platforms?
Not really.
Mm,
I have
no?
accounts, but
Okay.
I don't post on them.
So don't look for her anywhere else except on school
Yes.
at this point.
Yes.
So good, 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 good. Okay. Abigail, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody, again, hit subscribe, like, notifications, all the things, and we will see you next time. Bye.